Love you. I love you too. Wow, I got choked up on that song. Wow, that usually doesn't happen. I don't know if vulnerability is a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's good to feel. I'll probably be doing more of that today. I don't know. I had an interesting night last night. Little sleep and a lot of mind activity, sort of like Jacob wrestling with the angel. It's an old story, but anyway, let me start with a joke. I'll go from ridiculous to the sublime or something like that, or light to heavy, whatever. So this Irish fellow goes into a pub. I don't know why I'm telling that today, but and he orders 3 Guinness, and he wants them all at the same time. So the bartender puts the 3 Guinness down in front of him, and he just does this every day. Comes in, orders 3 Guinness, set them in front of him. So the curiosity of the bartender gets to him, and he finally says, I gotta ask you, sir, why do you order 3 of these? He says, well, one is for me, and he says, and the other for my 2 brothers are in Ireland. So I like to think about them when I'm having my Guinness. My brogue is not great, sorry. Anyway, so the bartender, oh yeah, that's cool. So a couple of weeks go by, and he does this, and then one day he comes in, and he just orders 2 Guinness. So the bartender notices, and he goes, oh, he figures something bad has happened. You know? So he walks up to him, and he says, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And he said, oh no, the boys are fine. I just quit drinking. Oh, we love our illusions, don't we? So, what if there was something that you could get that would give you happiness, peace of mind, and freedom? And it would cost you everything that you have. Would you do it?
Yes.
Jesus tells this parable. He says, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who, when he has found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Now, obviously, Jesus is not talking about real pearls here. He's talking metaphorically about the kingdom of heaven. Do you think of these words, great price, great price? You know, if, let's say, this ring was extremely valuable, it is valuable to me because I've worn it for 45 years, and it's intrinsic. And by the way, Denise is here. Denise. So, beloved Denise, who I refer to lovingly all the time, is here with us today. So,
is it true?
yes.
Yes.
Never use your name in vain. So let's say this ring was extremely valuable. What that would mean would be that it had, that it was something precious, yeah? But what would it also infer that I said this is extremely valuable? What would you take from that? Could be, yes.
Expensive.
Yes. Extremely what? Costly. We want things that are extremely valuable. Are we willing to pay the price? And this is what Jesus is trying to convey when he's talking about this merchant. That he sees that in acquiring this thing that is so valuable, that he is willing to give up everything else for this one something. Jesus wasn't beating around the bush when he suggested that the spiritual life was readily available, but it would come at great cost. It's rife with paradox, Jesus' teachings. Because on one hand, he says, the kingdom of God is here and now. What could be more available than what's here and now? Can you think of anything, if I said, whatever it is, it's here and it's now, could it be any more available to you? It's like, it's in your pocket, right? Or you've consumed it, it's already you, right? But there's this cost factor. Now, what would it possibly be that we would have to give up in order to be who we already are? Ego, illusions, attachments. In other words, you remember that show? This is really dating me now, but I obviously, with this hair, you know I'm not young anymore. Remember the show To Tell the Truth? And at the conclusion, after these three imposters, or two imposters and one person who really was who they said they were, the questions would be, the contestants would be asking them questions to find out who was lying, who was an imposter, and then try to discern, who the real person was. And then finally they would say, would the real whoever please stand up? And then the real person would stand up. The other ones were the imposters. But sometimes they got it wrong, didn't they? In other words, the contestants were fooled by how these people presented themselves so convincingly to be somebody other than who they actually were. Do you know anybody like that in your life? We're going to get some more. I resemble that remark. We come by it honestly, though, right? We learn to be this character, this person, and over time we began to think of ourselves as an individual. And this is part of what it means to play the role of being a human being on this planet. You have to have a separate identity. You get a name. We have this thing called a body, right? And then we have this story and how I'm different from you and you're different from me. So all that's necessary in this human scene, but the cost of becoming that character, almost like a character in a play, and the play being our life, the cost of that was losing our original identity. And our original identity, of course, can't be lost because it's who we really are. So the paradox is extraordinarily confounding many times, because when you talk about spiritual growth and unfoldment, you're not asking somebody to be something else. You're asking for them to let go of the something else that they're not, in order to remember and return to the awareness of who and what we truly are. That's the pearl of great price. Very valuable and very costly. So we all say, yeah, I want that. I want peace. I want happiness. I want freedom. What we're up against is a lot of conditioning. But all of that conditioning is superficial. And that's why the spiritual life that we talk about here is about looking closely at who we are, or who we think we are, and questioning who we've taken ourselves to be, who we believe ourselves to be, and begin to see through the veneer of this identity that you and I have carried on for all this time. And see, is that true? And you can do it very superficially with just like your name. You could change your name, so you're not obviously like your name. You could change your body, we know that, right? Now your body can change without your permission, right? That can happen. You can change your gender, right? I mean, all of these things are possible. So all the ways that we sort of identify ourselves, superficially, like externally, the body, the name, and then like your job, like maybe for 30 years you were a lawyer, or 30 years you were a doctor, or a baker, or a candlestick maker, or whatever you were, and that job goes away, or you retire, or you lose that job. Are you still you? Yeah, of course, you're you. And then you get more subtle, and you begin to think, well, what about my beliefs and my thoughts and my memories and that's what makes me, right? Well, have you noticed that your beliefs can be changed? Have you ever changed your beliefs? And when you changed your belief, was a little bit of you gone? Or was a little of the you thought you were gone? And what remained was something more essential, right? So that happens. And then, like, you said, well, yeah, but I have this mind, right? And so I have all these thoughts, and those thoughts are my thoughts. They're not. You don't know what I'm thinking. These are my thoughts. That makes me me. But wait a minute now. If you have a thought, and that thought goes, have you observed a thought? And have you observed a thought go? Yeah? Okay, so when the thought, you have a thought, this is my thought, this is who I am, now I thought, and then that thought goes, but then what? Do you go? Weren't you there before the thought, during the thought, and after the thought? So wait a minute, now, who is this me, this I, that I say I am? And feelings are a little bit more, we're attached to our feelings. I am sad. Have you ever been sad and then not been sad? So were you yourself when you were sad, and then somebody else when you were not sad? Still you, huh? You were sad, you were you before you were sad, and during the sadness, and then the sadness went away. What's left? What remains of us is what the spiritual life asks us to inquire into. And if we do this process, it's almost like, I don't want to be gross. Oh, what the heck. I mean, you could actually, we had a spiritual guide that walked us through this sort of a meditation where he said, okay, get your sense of yourself, wherever that is. And you think, okay, I'm this body, And he said, well, okay, what if your arm, he didn't say it grossly, but he just said, what if your arm just floated off your body? Your right arm, okay. Are you still you? Yeah. And little by little, basically dismembered you in a sense until what was left was your head. Because then a lot of us think of ourselves as, I'm here. I'm inside my head. This is where I'm located. And then he would little by little take a quadrant here and a quadrant there. And when you're all done, you have this sense of spaciousness, emptiness, yet beingness. You're still here. You still have a sense of being. And that's what it means to be a fully realized spiritual being, is when we begin to let go of everything that we have identified with, all those false identities that you and I have taken on in this life, that we so preciously cling to, like attachments, like you said, attachments. We're attached to them. But those of us who have lived a few years and we've gone through many losses, anyone gone here through major losses in their life? I don't think anyone can live more than a couple decades without going through some losses. And what you realize when you go through a loss is, I thought I was my job, or I thought I was in that marriage, and I thought that's who I was, and I thought I was a mother, and now my kids are all gone, and now, and little by little, as life progresses, you go through this process of what? Addition? Subtraction, right? And that's what Meister Eckhart said. God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by a process of subtraction. And you can see why, right? Because the more you chip away at who you're not, the more you get down to your essential self. And your essential self shines brighter the less veneers and assumptions that we have about our identity. That's why a lot of people have spiritual breakthroughs after they've had great losses. Because in that moment, sometimes something very precious goes out of your life. It could be physical, it could be money, it could be, relationship. There's this feeling of the abyss, right? This feeling like, who am I? Because there's this sense that we were bolstered, or foundation of our life was this thing that was temporary. And its temporary nature became real to us when we lose it. And then we go, and in the free fall of trying to find ourselves, we realize that the I, has never gone anywhere. It's just all these character attributes that we've played. It's just like you and I have been playing a role called, this one's called Larry, in a male body that's lived these many years. That's not who I am. That's the character that I have been playing. You've been playing. Everyone on this planet has played a character role. It's not essential to you, as we have just discussed this morning. So Jesus was really saying, if you want to know who you are, if you want the pearl of great price, if you want peace, love, happiness as a constant in your life, not related to those things that you can acquire in life, those possessions that you can get, the accomplishments that you can get, the people you can get to love you. If you can get the peace and love and happiness unconditionally, you've got to give up all those things which have defined you. Because the imposter stands between you and the real. As long as I'm invested in Denise being the source of my love, then I am dependent upon her behaving a certain way for me to feel loved. We know this one, don't we? That's one of our favorite games we play. And yes, do I love Denise? Of course I love Denise. Does Denise love me? Yes. Do we always get along? No. We have our moments. And what we're learning as we grow together is the source of our love is where? within. It's the best love story you can ever believe in, because it just happens to be true. And those are the best stories of all. So, see if there's anything else I wanted to say about this. I'm sure you guys will have something to say back to me. Oh yeah, a couple more from Jesus. Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be." Basically the same message. Those things that we are invested in here in this world, it's okay to have things. It's just that we don't invest our sense of value or identity in them. That's when life can become very tentative and unpredictable. And he also said, "For those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance." What was he talking about? For those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. Faith? Yeah, could be, yeah. I think he was talking about beingness or consciousness. Yeah, knowing who you are. Because he wasn't just talking about stuff, because that would sound like, the rich get richer kind of thing. That wasn't what he was about. But for those who have a consciousness of the truth of their being, then more will be given to them. In other words, we know there is a law, right? There's a law of attraction, or whatever you want to call it, that which you hold to be true generally outpictures in your life. So if you know yourself to be a temporary being, which is what a separate self is, then you're constantly going to be looking for that which can hurt you and be on guard for that, or what can kill you, be on guard for that. That's this vulnerable nature of feeling that we are separate. And also, you can feel that that there's something missing, right? And so your whole life is about relationships or substances or things that you can acquire in your life that can bring you that sense of wholeness. That's why we're either seeking or resisting when we're identified as a separate self. We're either seeking something to complete us, or we're resisting those things that can hurt us. That's what we're up against when we're looking for the pearl of great price. But the good news is that who and what we really are, this essential spiritual self, has never gone anywhere. All the time it's been sort of like in the background, and everything we have taken on as our false self is in the foreground, occluding the recognition of our true nature. Does this make sense? So, good news is we can all have the pearl of great price, and all we have to do is give up everything else. And it could be a journey, as it has been, yes, for many of us. But I think it's just important that we don't see it as an impossibility. Like a lot of the teachings have been, well, if you meditate for 40 years and you get the right teacher, you might have that breakthrough and you'll become enlightened and you know who you are. But the truth is not, does not say that. That may be what some traditions and disciplines would say. But what Jesus was saying is, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of God is within you. If that's true, then there need be no waiting. There only needs to be a deeper seeing of who and what we really are. And we can do that on our own. Teachers help, scriptures and things like that are add-ons as well. But we can return to the knowing of who we are because we already are who we are. We don't have to become that. It's more about a shedding of who we're not. Beginning little by little saying, let's say I got really upset, about this, and one of my things is the fear of public speaking. I have done this over 1,000 times, and last night I couldn't sleep. I was so anxious about coming up here and speaking today. I've done this over 1,000 times over 25 years. 30. Time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. But the point is that as shocking as that was to me, you have to realize that as you get closer to, feeling more divested of these false identities, there's going to be some that are going to hold on for dear life. And I have a trauma around speaking in front of people. It goes back to when I was 13 years old, and we were not going to church at that time at all, but it was Christmas morning, and I said to my mom and dad, I said, why don't we have a kind of a service, and I'll read this Christmas story from the Bible and everything. My mom says, that's a great idea. And my dad goes, what a hypocrite. So he says that to me. And, a father has the voice of authority. And I felt shamed in that moment. So here was a moment where I was going to get up and speak, which I was not. I was a shy boy anyway. I was going to get up and speak on spiritual matters. So here, umpteen years later, last night, even though I don't have a conscious memory of that at the moment, I'm feeling this fear and this anxiety kept me awake most of the night. So I know who and what I really am. I have had many glimpses of this true nature and its freedom, but there's lots of layers that still have to be dealt with. And those layers are old conditionings. They call them vasanas. They're old encrusted beliefs that take the place, that seemingly stand between you and knowing who you are. And it's just a matter of seeing through them and asking for help, asking for spirit to release you from those old memories and those old beliefs. But they can take you by surprise. And sometimes when they flare up like that with such intensity, sometimes means you're coming to the end. You may not be having to deal with this much longer, but it's gonna have some last, the last stand with the intensity to maybe turn you back from your intention to awaken fully. I told Denise about it today, and even just telling my wife, who knows me so well, it's sort of incredulous. It's like, how could you be dealing with the fear of public speaking after 25 years to a group that is so loving and so warm and accepting? 30. Yeah. How long you and I have been together now? Anyway, Denise is my sounding board and loving partner to help, see. And it's wonderful to have someone who can help you see what you can't see for yourself, especially if they're gentle about it. So let's see. Tell me where you are in this journey, this idea of knowing that the pearl of great price, it's right here, and what stands in the way? How do you find your way back to a deeper identity than who you think you are when you get triggered? This is a practical spiritual adventure we're on here, where we look for practical ways to return to the truth. And it helps to hear different versions of us losing ourselves in stories from our past. Anyone have a way of sharing that? And it's in this safe space.
Well, I was going to say that this entire message really hits home to me. A couple days ago, I was reading something from the Dalai Lama, who was in Stockholm, speaking about world peace. gets in the way.
Ah,
And you're speaking directly to it. The secondary attachments that we have in our lives, like I'm Tibetan and I'm Buddhist.
uh-huh.
The minute he presents that identity to everyone, it creates a division. And he was talking about how to feel those layers of secondary attachment. That is really the key for us connecting in unity.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So your message really was hitting well.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think identity is, we have, I don't know who said this, was it, I think, not Fillmore, but who wrote Discover the Power with Eric Butterworth, thank you. He said, you learn to be you. And when he says you, he's not talking about the essence of you, the spiritual being. You learn to be this character. You learned that. And so now, if you're going to get back to who you really are, which is your spiritual beingness, there's an unlayering process. Like when I went to bed last night, I was comfortable and I fell asleep for about 3 hours, and I woke up and I had this fear in my gut. Like, what? And I've given over 1,000 talks over 30 years. Why is this fear here? Because apparently it's a residue of an old story that has there's no logic to it. You can't say, well, how could you be a minister for 30 years and given hundreds and hundreds of talks and still have this feeling? It's because it's still attached to who I think I am. There's still a residue there of that. Yes.
When we're born, Larry, we're helpless, but we don't have the strength to build, abilities to do it. And the whole thing about life is that we have to learn to be an adult. But that weakness stays there, that sense of weakness is always a part of who we are until we go back where we actually came from, which is who I am, and learn to draw on that as who we are.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like the spiritual birth gets forgotten in the physical birth, and we need to kind of rebirth ourselves spiritually, which is what we do here, which we do in a context here of remembering the truth of what we are. But we have to be willing and not throw in the towel when we come up against these old beliefs that are persistent, as I just described to me. And I think everyone in this room probably that's been on the path for a long time will say, God, I thought I was doing really well. And then something triggered me and I was so angry and I was not loving and I was not spiritual. And well, that's just, that was something that got embedded in us along the way. And it takes whatever time it takes. In the meantime, the essence of us is not hurt, but at the level of the physical being that we think we are, it's hard. It kept me awake. Now I really want to wake up, but I was.
I am the pearl of great price.
Yes.
We all need to recognize and realize.
That's right. That's right. I am. But we've also got a lot of I am statements growing up that were different from that too.
Yeah.
You are. You're a bad boy or whatever you are. Yes.
So when you first asked that question, Mary, what came to my mind? Well, if I knew the answer to that question, I'd just jump right through that hoop and be done with it. But no, it doesn't like you. Likewise, like what everyone is saying, it's these layers that have to come off.
Yeah.
So I remember a time many years ago when some kind of negative self-talk was dramatizing itself in my mind, and I go, I don't have to believe everything my mind thinks. That was actually a revelation. Right then and there, I could put a stop to a lot of nonsense and gradually allow something else to unfold.
Yes.
And I think that's what it is, that we may not know what's holding us back, but it's these layers that keep coming up in our daily life and our daily practice.
Yes. And if we can see them as coming up to be released, as opposed to coming up to be against us, against our growth, like, well, unless you can become aware of something, you can't really deal with it, right? You can't make a decision about, saying that's not true for me. So when it comes up, it's like serving up your next step in your healing, your evolution. There was another hand. Yes.
So in my life education, I've learned that we're 70% unconscious and 30% conscious. We can go all over. No, 70% it might be higher in general. And also, I do a lot of landmark education. They believe you have a life sentence. 1/4 will be the game before age 3 that you took in about yourself. But the 2 tools that I wanted to share that I use to release that quickly and seems to work very well is breath work, and emotional freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I have a story about my husband talking. I want to share it. Public school. From the time he was 10.
Yes. Yeah. Any method that works for us is a path that, is a valid path. That's one thing nice about unity is that we don't prescribe like this, you got to do it this way. You got to get down on your knees and say these many Hail Mary or whatever, because what we believe is that, the wisdom that we our authentic true self is always available to us. And yet we're looking through the filter of our life experiences, right? But we can ask for the wisdom that is sensitive to those life experiences. So what we draw to us oftentimes is a methodology that is particularly useful and helpful for who and what we are. So it's nice that there are many paths. Yes.
Your message and philosophy, I had a career I was very proud of. No, it still is. But I kind of lost track of how it that way. But it was me. I worked very hard. And one day I was talking to someone about my career. The person told me, they don't know who you are, but they don't care about it. And it offended me because that was me.
Yeah.
But that deed of me trying to be successful, and because of many reasons of how I grew up, how my father said to me, what I noticed around me as far as how other people live, created this person that wanted to succeed to the point of saying, I am a successful person.
Yes.
But at the same time, by bringing all of that onto the real me, I created structure to the point where it exploded and I became an alcoholic. Now, I'm learning through listening to things you say, other help, that there is a real that really is important. Is that really that much more to really now after the entire year than I ever was before. It's what I strive to is to really finally be the real me, to live the life that I want with that I ever had.
Wow. Thank you. Whew. Thank you. We felt that. And I was choked up by that song. When that one line, the bush burns unconsumed. Who and what we are, never gets damaged or diminished in any way by all of the trials and tribulations of a life. And when you touch that truth in you, well, for me, tears flow, because it's this great liberation of all the suffering that we've taken on, all the guilt and the shame and the I'm not good enough and I should be better and I don't get it, and all of that can be consumed in the knowing of something deeper and more essential, and that is what we're all trying to find our way back to, is that essential self that doesn't need to perform well to feel that we matter, that we're successful, that we're loved, that we're important, that there's an essential wholeness that we come in with. It's in our spiritual DNA. It's not from what we've accomplished. It's not for how much money we make. It's not who we marry or what we do in a life. It's that wholeness is the spiritual essence of us. And sometimes life, especially at this age, for a lot of us, it's like we've had enough losses to begin to see, well, wait a minute, that couldn't be who I was, because I lost money, I lost a job, I lost a partner, I lost this, and here I am, Lord. I'm still here. And I don't mean the physical, but I mean the sense of self, the sense of your own being. That's the essence of us. That's what nobody or nothing and anyone can take away from you. And life cannot strip you of that essence. And it's sometimes when life does strip you of who you think you are, you get closer to that essence. And then you go, this is what I am. So thank you I felt that. Thank you. Star.
So I had the opportunity to retire early, not was planned that. My husband got hurt, and we both had to change our lifestyle at the same early, 55. And so through the years after that, learning to identify not as what my job was, what I was doing, what I was involved in, all that stuff. I had to continue to shed what is the real me. What is my purpose? Why am I here? And throughout the years, it becomes even more shedding of political beliefs, tribal beliefs, judgment, and worrying about what I'm doing instead of what I'm being, and being comfortable at expressing that in conversation with new friends and old friends. I'm just being. I just want to be peace. I don't want to judge. I don't want to be angry.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a reason that I'm psyched up. I just want to be, and that's a harder place to be, because most people, when you meet them, it's like, well, what do you do? What do you into?
Yeah, right.
And just say, all I want is just to find peace.
Yeah.
For myself and for those around me.
Yeah.
It's a harder thing to explain.
Yeah, just being a spiritual being doesn't seem to be enough in a world that judges by appearances, does it? And I think that there's many of us that are learning to walk that way, and the more that we can walk that way comfortably, the more we sort of give people permission, around us to be just to your authentic self, because our society, let's face it, especially Western societies, is so materialistic, and you are how much money you have and where you live and where you went to school and, who your friends are. I mean, all of that stuff, ends up deepening the layers between our essential self as a barrier to our essential self. So a lot of life for many of us is an unlayering process. And sometimes that happens voluntarily when we leave a job voluntarily, or we lose a job by being released, and we go, oh, who am I now without this job? Who am I without money? Who am I without this partner in my life? Who am I? And that's actually, even though from a human standpoint it's bad news, it's good news for the soul. because getting back to your essence is always good. And then you bring your whole self to your new relationship or your new job or whatever it is. So, yeah, Renee.
I just wanted to add to that, what Star and both of you were saying, that for a while, trying to follow this spiritual path, I found myself, if I was upset or angry or something along those lines, I would try to repress that. Oh, that's not who I am. I want to be his spiritual self. That's not who I am. So there was this big conflict of division, and finally it's come to a place of recognizing that when I'm angry, the whole purpose of that is to feel that deeply and genuinely, oh, this is coming up from within me, and what is it trying to teach me? Because it really is the next essential step on the path towards opening up and broadening that perspective of who we are. So anger is not bad, or jealousy is not bad. It's a teacher. It's a teacher that's coming up to say, hello, I'm in here. What are you going to do about it? And how to recognize and deal with that with compassion and self-forgiveness, so that we can truly forgive others for whatever infractions we think they're engaging in.
Yeah, what you say is really wise, and I think a lot of us, the longer when we're on the spiritual path, we think we're supposed to be like very holy and peaceful and never get upset and everything. That's disingenuous, and it's spiritual bypassing. No, I mean you didn't. You know, you came by that anger, whatever. You came by that honestly. You know, right? You went through what you went through, and if we're going to get down to the core of who we are, we have to embrace the feelings that come up and deal with them honestly. You know, and say what's the missing, what need do I have that's not being met here, as opposed to just repressing the anger without learning something about it and all that. My beloved here, Denise.
Yeah, this is such a great conversation, and being a Unity minister for 25, 30 years, as you are, what's so beautiful now in Unity is this spaciousness to talk about our shadowy self.
Yeah.
And that, embracing our human. So we're not trying to kill it or exercise it, but just give it compassion, as you were talking, and using these difficult emotions that came up for you in the night as a signpost to what something else is going on, versus I am fear, right? Is what am I needing in that moment? I'm needing safety and protection and care and love and compassion. And then we give that to ourselves. So there's an emotional maturity that takes place when you're willing to sit with our shadowy thoughts and not run and say, I should know better. But to be with it and use it as a healing moment.
I think that's the biggest thing I've learned from Denise is compassion. I kind of came from the school, probably the way I was raised and all that stuff, but that if you misbehaved or you did something that wasn't perfect, then you spank yourself. You feel guilty, you feel shame, you feel like all that, which is counterproductive to growth and unfoldment. When you can give yourself compassion and then be curious, like you said, about what the need is that's being met, and then you can become more resourceful in getting your needs met to move towards that maybe not being so strong a trigger in the future. So I think, we can marry psychology and spirituality, understanding how the mind works, understanding what our needs are, and maybe finding ways of skillful means of getting our needs met so that we are not reactive, we're not just acting out.
And until we can do that, until we can go through the fire of our own anger or rage or judgment and take a really clear look at it and practice compassion, self-compassion, and self-forgiveness, we cannot give it to another. We have to go through that fire and cleanse that in such a way with such deep understanding and integration that we can truly give it to another.
Yes.
So the name Donald Trump, which can immediately evoke, in some people, rage, intolerance, what have you. No. Go into the fire of it and see what it is about this brother that I cannot accept. It's really, and that's the process. If I really want to love my brother and my sister, I've got to go through this fire in here first.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, life can just really be, one opportunity to inquire after another. Because when we react, it's evidence unto how we are seeing life, what we're believing, and that's usually what the barriers are to knowing our true self, is our beliefs, and our conditioning, all of that. So when it comes up, then if it can be seen as, oh, I'm glad this is coming up, because this is something that I want to work on, to see through it, so that it no longer is an obstacle to the love and happiness and peace that is my essential nature. So that's a more mature approach to emotional growth. And hang on just a second. She had her hand up, so I just want to get her to get you next. That's no problem.
And that's the awe in the midst of miracles that was in that song.
Yes.
We can be in awe of the process of being human.
Yes.
And we stand in the miracles and we can actually experience them and see them and feel them.
Yes, and I did not know it. That's that ignorance that leads to enlightenment, when we begin to be present for the lesson or present for the insight, as opposed to resisting and pushing and going to war with it, which so often is when things are uncomfortable. We want to dismiss it, and it may be there for us, not against us. That's the enlightened perspective. Are we done for the day? Oh, I've kept you over. You guys didn't complain or anything. It's 10 to 12. So, okay. Well, let's do a little closing prayer, and then we can close our service. So I just invite you to take a deep breath with me. We've taken on a lot of stuff here. And again. So we give thanks for the clarity and the openness of this community, for the willingness to bring our human understanding into the light of truth. We give thanks for the willingness that is at the core of us to reveal what needs to be revealed, to heal what needs to be healed, that we might know more deeply and more completely the truth of us as we were created in the image and likeness of love and peace and wholeness. We thank you, Spirit, that you are the guiding light that illuminates those places where we still feel confused or doubtful or frustrated. May we continue to look to your light, to your love and your wisdom going forward, so that we may be a greater expression of how we were created. May we be gentle, understanding, compassionate with ourselves and others as we grow together, home to the truth that will set us free. Thank you, God. Amen.